Okay, everybody, welcome to our LinkedIn session for organisations supporting veterans and their families. We're going to start off the session today introducing ourselves, and then we'll talk more about what the session is and who RNID are. So just starting off, my name's Crystal Rolfe. I'm the Director of England here at RNID, and I'll hand over next to Henry.
Hello, my name is Henry Skinner. I'm the Regional Information Manager for RNID. I'm deaf, I use sign language. I'm speaking through an interpreter today called Bridget.
Thanks, Henry, and thanks, Bridget. Over to you next, Paul.
Thanks, Crystal. So my name's Paul Chappell, and I'm the Quality Assurance and Performance Manager in Wales. So I work with the Information Service and also our Veteran Service there, as well as our Hearing Aid Support Service. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. So we should also have captions working on this session, as well as having Bridget interpreting for us. So we're going to all really try to make sure that we speak slowly and make lots of pauses to make sure that our communication support catches up. So hopefully that will work today. This session is being held because we know that there's 300,000 ex-service personnel living in the UK with hearing loss or tinnitus. The project itself that we're working on is funded by the Chancellor and the Royal British Legion using LIBOR funds, and that's in England, Northern Ireland and Wales. There's a separate project that we're running in Scotland, a Hearing Forces project with a different funder. But if you're somebody supporting people, veterans in Scotland, don't go away. Lots of this information might be useful for you too. There's a link to a very brief evaluation form coming up. We'd really appreciate it if you can fill that in for us. That's really useful for us. So you might be thinking next, who are RNID? Who are we as an organisation? So we are the charity that's connecting people to create a fully inclusive society. And we exist because life should be fully inclusive for deaf people and those with hearing loss or tinnitus. Together we campaign for an inclusive society, and we connect people to practical advice, fund research to pioneer new treatments for hearing loss and tinnitus. You may also know us as Action on Hearing Loss, which is our previous name. We've just changed our name back to RNID, which many of you may know from before. So I'm just pausing again just for the captions and our interpreter to catch up with us. So we'd really be interested in what people think of our new name RNID. So please do post in the comments afterwards. It's really useful for us to know what people think. And we'll also post a link to our new brand video as well. So we couldn't run a session today without acknowledging COVID-19, who does at the moment. COVID-19 has had a really big impact on people who are deaf, hard of hearing, or have tinnitus. And it's had a really big impact on our services as well. So we have kind of paused our face-to-face provision, but we've been doing loads to support people remotely or through distance services, and providing face-to-face services where something's really critical. We know that audiology provision for people during lockdown has been really difficult, and a lot of variation across the country as well. So people have in some places struggled getting support with their hearing aids. Some people have managed to get that support via the post, whether that's repairs, batteries, cleaning of their hearing aids. In order to make sure that people can get the right information about how they can get support at the moment through their audiology department, if you can't get hold of the audiology department, they can contact us. We've got a directory we're trying to keep up to date about what support is available. And if we don't know, we'll do our best to find out for you or for the people that you're supporting. And so people can come to us about that. And Paul is going to talk next about the hearing loss pathway for veterans. So over to you, Paul.
Thanks, Crystal. So on a normal kind of journey for someone on the hearing loss pathway, they'd acknowledge they've got a hearing loss, and we'd kind of advise them to go and see their GP. Obviously, we're working with veterans ourselves. We've become or we've been told, and also we've experienced it, that veterans have been trained to be self-reliant, so they're a bit more resistant to asking for help. You probably agree with that. And that's something that we're used to dealing with, because people that we support on average take 10 years to acknowledge they've got a hearing loss anyway. So someone who's been trained to be self-reliant is probably even longer. So I guess the message we're trying to get across to people who support veterans is to give them a gentle nudge to get themselves on the hearing loss pathway, and to speak to their GP if they've got signs of hearing loss. I mean, for examples of signs of hearing loss, for example, could be if they're having difficulty conversing with you or with other people, misunderstanding what's been said, or if like their partner or someone in the house tells you that they've always got the TV up too loud or the radio too loud. These are all kind of classic signs of hearing loss. And again, it's just kind of giving them that gentle nudge to go and speak to their doctor. And the other important thing is when they go and see their doctor, it's really important for them to mention that they are a veteran, and that they've served in the armed forces, because there are such things as the Armed Forces Covenant, which is designed to make everything as fair as possible for those who have served. And what it can mean is actually priority treatment for veterans. It can be different in different areas. So, for example, because there's so many different health boards across the UK, some health boards might move veterans to the front of the waiting list if they haven't got their hearing aid first of all. Or for some health boards, they might offer not to charge a veteran if they lose their hearing aids or something like that. But like I said, it's different across the UK. But it's really important that the veterans kind of mention that their hearing loss is from service. Obviously, you're going to be possibly supporting veterans who have already taken that step and got hearing aids. And hearing aids are fantastic devices. Got so much technology packed into a small unit, but because of that, they can be affected by wax and moisture and other small elements. So if they are having issues with their hearing aid, then get in touch with us, because we might be able to help them or help you to help them, either by giving you tips on how to manage it themselves, or by letting you know what's available locally. So Crystal, did you want to come back in about some more effects of COVID-19?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Before I do that, I'd just kind of like to remind everybody throughout this session, you can ask questions in the comments box, and we'll get back to you about those. So despite the fact that it's a recorded session, we can get back to you about those. And we wanted to give some examples at this point of the kind of things that we get asked regularly. And so an example of the kind of thing we get asked a lot here would be, what organisations can help veterans with access to things like funding or services? I wonder if there's kind of any specific things that you wanted to add there, Paul.
Well, I was going to talk about benefits again a bit later, but I guess off the top of my head, the first organisation that comes to mind is SAFA, being kind of like the organisation, I guess, for veterans, and for them to get in touch with SAFA if for anything to do with funding and care services. Obviously, things like funding for veterans can be means assisted, so bear that in mind. But like I said, I'm going into a bit more detail about benefits later, so yeah, maybe we'll answer that question in a bit more detail then.
Excellent, thank you, Paul. So as Paul said, COVID-19's had a really, really big impact on people who are deaf, hard of hearing, or have tinnitus. And one of the main things that people have reported to us is the impact that face coverings or masks has had on people. As an organisation, we obviously understand the need for those in certain settings, but I think it's important to acknowledge the huge impact that they have had. And that is because people who are deaf or have hearing loss really require access to kind of visual cues in order to be able to communicate, and lip reading is a really important part of that. And when that's taken away, it makes things very, very difficult for people. People have reported it having a really large impact on their mental health and really big concern, both in kind of being able to access day-to-day tasks such as shopping or accessing public transport, but also being able to do their jobs, and being able to understand what people are saying to them. We've done a lot of work as an organisation to make sure people are aware of clear masks, and there's lots of work happening with different health authorities across the different countries to make sure that those are available in health and social care settings where appropriate, which helps a lot. Lots of people also don't realise that there are exemptions when there's lots of information about that on our website. So if you are communicating with somebody who needs to lip read, you are in yourself exempt from wearing a mask for that time if you feel comfortable with that. So you can lower your mask in order to communicate with somebody who's deaf or has hearing loss. And we think that's really, really vital. And there's lots of information about that. And that's some kind of really important and in-depth conversations we've been having with government to make sure that people can access the really vital communication that they need. So please do ask us any questions that you've got, pop them in the comments, any questions that you've got at all about the impact that COVID-19 has had on people or around face masks specifically. And so for the next section, I'm going to hand over to Henry, please, to talk about communication tips. Thanks, Henry.
Thank you, Crystal. Now, we know that coronavirus has had a great impact, and the masks, I've had that experience myself. So it's important to talk to people who've got hearing loss in a clear way. Here are some tips. Here's the first one. Make sure that you're facing the person eye to eye. Don't shout, just talk normally. You don't have to exaggerate what you're saying because it doesn't make it clear at all. Secondly, if you don't understand, just repeat, or if the person doesn't understand, perhaps change around the words you're using, make it a bit clearer. The third tip is, if there's a lot of background noise, try and move to a quieter place. And the fourth thing is, if you really need to, you can use gestures, pointing, waving. These things will all help to communicate. And lastly, you can write things down. If you've got paper and pen, or you can text things on your phone, you could even use a whiteboard. If you're talking to a person and they've got some kind of hearing loss, a veteran, what about standing in a different place in the room? The room is quite important. Like, for example, the lights. If it's really dark, it's hard to lip read. Or if there's something on the background, some jazzy art or something, it's hard to see clearly. If someone's putting their hands in front of their mouth, you can't lip read. Keep your mouth clear. And if there's things in the sound in the room acoustically that are making it echo, maybe use soft furnishings, put rubber on the bottom of chairs and tables. And the most important thing is to be patient. If you get stressed, it won't work. Just keep calm. I'm going to talk some more about equipment that can help you later. And if you want more information about lip reading classes, then you can have a look on the website. And please put any questions in the comments box. Thank you. Handing over back to Crystal.
Thank you, Henry. So, you know, I talked a moment ago about kind of face covering regulations and exemptions. All of that information we'll pop a link to in the comments as well. So there'll be some more information you can gather there, and please do contact us if you want to talk it through in more detail. So we all know that the impact that COVID-19 has had in terms of isolation on people. We think that this has obviously been really heightened by the lockdowns for people who are deaf or have hearing loss. We think that 30% of adults surveyed reported their well-being had been affected through feeling lonely in the first month of lockdown. Obviously, this is especially so for people that were shielding. You know, people are relying on the telephone and video calls to keep in touch, and that's much, much harder if you're deaf or have hearing loss. We've run befriending services in different parts of the UK, so get in touch if you think we could help somebody and support them. Equally, if you think you know, that somebody just needs to talk about the different types of things that they've done to try and support themselves, to be able to hear better, they can contact our information line through web chat or email or the telephone, to talk through whether they've done everything they can to try and make sure they can communicate, which will help them feel less isolated. So assistive equipment can also be really, really useful to try and improve that communication and feel less isolated. And Henry is now going to provide an overview of the equipment that's available, and demonstrate some things as well. So over to you, Henry.
I'm going to show you some of the equipment available. It's like an overview I'm giving you. There's more information on the Conivans website, and they're our partner. I've got one personal example here. I'll explain more about this later, but this is my listener. So I put this around my neck, and you put this on a personal list, you put this on the other person, towards the other person, and then this volume can go into a hearing aid so that you can hear what the other person is talking about. If you're struggling to hear, and then you can use one of these. I can tell you more about something called Roger Pen later. So have you ever wondered how people can hear the doorbell at home if they've got hearing loss? Here's an example of a doorbell. So the doorbell goes on as normal, and this device flashes, and it also makes a very loud sound. So that I think Henry's trying to show an example of the sound. So you press the doorbell, and you can hear the noise. Can you hear that noise? Oh, yes, there goes the flashing light. Yes, so that's how it works. And there's lots of different versions of these doorbells with flashing lights. Some of them are fixed. Some of the flashing lights you can have on a pager in your pocket. And they vibrate so that you know that the doorbell's being pressed. What about the phone? How can you use that? This is just one example from many different phones. This phone is a bit different. You can dial people in one press, and then when you're on the phone, you have a button here for the volume. You can make the volume louder. You don't have to ask people to speak up. You can just press the volume, and up it goes by itself. There's also some other buttons along here. There are more tools for you, like tone, to help you control the bass and the treble in someone's voice. And some of them are linked to a loop system. Here, this flashes so that you know that someone's phoning you. You can see the flashing light. We've got a lot of different types of phone, all sorts of levels of hearing, to just a small bit of assistance to a lot of assistance. I've got more equipment, but if you would like to ask me questions, that would be great.
Thanks, Henry. So I think we want to give people an opportunity to ask lots of questions in the comments, don't we? Then we can get back to them with those questions. Was there anything you wanted to add, Henry, on that before we move on to some products that Paul wants to talk about?
Yes, yes, if I could. There's one more thing. There's more equipment available for the home, like you can have a TV listening device. It's a bit similar to the conversation personal listener, but this time you can turn noises up and down to your level, so that the other people sitting in the room don't have to hear it. You have your own personal listening thing that's linked to the TV, and you choose the volume, and so that other people aren't affected by it. Some of them hang around your neck, some of them are on headphones, and Some of them are wireless, infrared, or work on FM. And there's also an alarm that you can wear in bed that vibrates under the pillow if there's a fire alarm in the night. It's a smoke alarm, and how will you hear it? So it's linked to this vibrating pillow, and also it flashes a light. Your local fire service can advise you about this. Please carry on asking questions linked to equipment.
Thanks, Henry. So carry on, Henry, sorry.
I forgot to add that on the equipment, some of it is expensive and some of it is actually quite cheap. But the cheap ones tend to be more basic. The more expensive ones tend to have more features and be better quality. Personally, I think the more expensive, better quality ones are the better choice. Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you. So Paul, over to you. I think you had a kind of couple of things to add on that as well. You're on mute, Paul.
Sorry, I had to mute myself because my dog's been whinging next to me. But
it wouldn't be a COVID session without somebody saying you're on mute.
So just to add on to what Henry was saying about products that can support people around the house, I guess we should also talk about products that will be useful for people who support veterans. So when the veterans are coming in to your, well, obviously we're thinking non-COVID now, into your place of work, and they're asking for one-to-one support. Some of the devices that Henry mentioned as a personal listener can be a very good addition to your support, as well as the communication tips. So things like what Henry mentioned, the listener device, you can get things like a Sonido, which can be like an entry-level listening device for one-to-one conversations. They're good because they're basic and easy to use. They can be used with headphones as well. So if someone comes in with a hearing loss, but they haven't yet got hearing aids, they can be used by someone like that. But then you've also got then the more advanced listeners, such as a Roger pen, which wirelessly connects to hearing aids, which means the microphone can be placed on the speaker or on the table if it's in a kind of conversation mode. And actually that kind of goes on to kind of small groups, because sometimes you might be supporting like a small group of veterans, and that's where the wireless bundles can come into their own. So things like the Roger pen, you can actually buy bundles for that, where you can have up to 16, I think it is 16 wireless neck loops that can be attached to that one Roger pen. And then if you're the person holding the Roger pen, then up to 16 people can wirelessly have your voice going straight into their hearing aids. And again, it can be put into the middle of a room in a conversation mode. And then you've got, if your type of service is talking with even larger groups, if we're talking about kind of like conferences or presentations to large rooms of people, that's when we would start looking at supporting those people with hearing loss by installing a portable loop system, which is kind of like a briefcase with a wire that you run around the room, which can be used in any room, I guess, as long as you kind of secure it down and make it safe. Or if you've got like a kind of fixed presentation area with a PA system, then you can get a loop system and a permanent wire hooked up to that. So that means that anyone within that room has got a hearing aid with a T-loop system can hear what you're saying from any part of the room. So it's a really good way to, as well as what Henry was saying about communication tips, to ensure that people are using your services can fully engage and can fully understand what's being said. And obviously, if you've got any questions about that type of equipment, then please put it in your comments box and we'll see if we can answer the question. I know our colleagues will also be putting in the links to our partner Con Evans, who again are a fantastic resource for information about hearing loss equipment. So come to us or go to Con Evans and we can help with that kind of information. So I'm now going to talk about, I mentioned earlier about benefits that can help veterans, and it can help you, I guess, in a roundabout way as well, because just to go back to what I was saying earlier about the hearing loss pathway and how important it is to encourage veterans to follow that hearing loss pathway. It's not only, I guess, to ensure that they get the help that they need as early as possible, but some funds, such as the War Pension and the Armed Forces Compensation Scheme, they may require evidence from audiology, and so that might require the person you're supporting to be already on that hearing loss pathway, to already have had the hearing tests done by audiology, to evidence that they have a hearing loss, that it's attributed from their service, and so then they're eligible for that support. And as Henry mentioned earlier, some equipment is cheap, some equipment is more expensive. The veterans that we've supported in getting funding for equipment, they always tend to get the authorization to go for the higher level equipment, the wireless devices that connect straight to hearing aids. Some have even had private hearing aids paid for. And so in a roundabout way, that's going to help you, because if they're better equipped with their equipment, then that's going to make supporting them even easier for you. Funding for someone on their, if you were looking for funding on their behalf, if you were helping them, then yes, it would be the War Pension Scheme if they left service before 2005. The Armed Forces Compensation Scheme would be after 2005, but there is a time limit attached to it of 7 years, so they need to make sure that they are applying as soon as possible. And to apply, they would go through Veterans UK on the government portal. The other thing to mention there is that there are also, as well as those two large schemes, there are, as I mentioned earlier, organisations like SAFA who will offer maybe smaller pots of money that might be means tested, but it's worth, if you're not sure, get in touch with us, because we might be able to help, or put a comment in the comments box and we might be able to answer a question on that. The other thing I wanted to just quickly mention is that if any person on this, watching this video, has a hearing loss themselves and thinks it's not just the veterans that need support with hearing losses, I might benefit from some equipment, then get in contact with us, because there's also pots of money available for employees, such as Access to Work, that might be able to help you communicate with the veterans that you're supporting. The other thing to mention is we do have a information pack for veterans, which goes into a bit more detail around contact details and stuff for veterans. So please do get in touch in the comment section, and we might be able to arrange sending some information out to you on that. I'm just going to pause because I'm thinking we've got some questions popping up from my colleague.
Yeah, Paul, we've got a question here, that commonly comes up is, can people access benefits on someone else's behalf?
Yes, so again, it's, but they would need support from the veteran, because they're going to need information about their service when filling it in. But when it comes to things like Veterans UK, they actually support the filling in of the forms as well. So it's the onus isn't on the veteran and family and carers. It's about just getting in touch with Veterans UK or SAFA and just providing them with the information they need to get the ball rolling. But like I said, it can also hinge on things like audiology tests. So they need to make sure they've gone on that pathway as well.
Paul, another question, just so we're really, really explicitly clear for people, you've talked a bit about kind of funding and benefits and what people can get. Specifically, if somebody wanted funding for some products, what would be the best route for them to go down for that?
Again, it depends on their service, but the two biggest ones are the War Pension and the Armed Forces Compensation Scheme. Those are the two I would try first by going through Veterans UK. If then they've missed out because of time or because of sometimes there's not sufficient evidence linking the hearing loss to their service, that's when I would be in touch with someone like SAFA. Then, if that initial route came to a no end.
Excellent, thanks, Paul. So I think we've got a bit of time now to talk a bit more about isolation, because it's been a really big theme this year. So I wonder if you could just kind of explain a little bit more about what the impact of isolation has been and what we can do about that.
Yeah, of course. So I mean, what you mentioned earlier around isolation being heightened by COVID-19. I mean, yes, we know that there is increased isolation, and the products that we talked about earlier can help to some degree in terms of communicating with people over telephones and making sure they can hear the telephone so they can know what's going on. But I guess we just want to know, we want services to know that we're aware of what's going on. We don't want veterans to think they're alone in dealing with this. And Crystal mentioned earlier that some of our, we've got befriending services across the UK, and for more information on that, please do get in touch. But as well as that, a lot of our services have adapted through the pandemic to support. So for instance, our hearing aid volunteers that we've got dotted around the UK, they've been calling up and checking in on people that we support. I know in Northern Ireland, our Deaf Befriending project coincided with lockdown, and they've redesigned to deliver remotely. In Wales, we've got a befriending service called Live Well with Hearing Loss, and they're currently adapting to COVID by doing more telephone calls, even writing letters just to make sure that people are not alone. And in England, in the north of England, we've got volunteers making phone calls and even doing kind of like befriending groups and on online lip reading classes, just to make sure that, again, no one is being left alone. And I would just encourage that if you support someone who you think may be isolated because of their hearing loss, and they may be in that stopgap where they don't have the equipment yet, or they don't have, or then just get in touch with us, because we might be able to support them virtually. We might be able to put them in touch with someone locally who can support them. So do think of us as a resource to support you when you're helping veterans. And again, leave a comment in the comments box or get in touch with us direct, because yeah, our information line, they're a fantastic resource. So yeah, do get in touch.
Yeah, Paul, I think that's kind of a really good point. I think at the moment it's really important to stay connected to each other, but stay connected to us as well. You know, both organisations supporting veterans and people who are deaf, have hearing loss or tinnitus, or those people directly impacted as well. Our information helpline is really there to support the people that need it. And as I say, you can access that via the telephone, web chat or email, and we'll pop some details in the comments about how you can use that. And that's open Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. But obviously the emails kind of get picked up at a later time as well. So what we're going to come on to talk about now is tinnitus. We know that veterans are very often affected by tinnitus, and there's a link with hearing loss as well. So we think 80% of people with hearing loss have tinnitus, and 80% of people with tinnitus have hearing loss. Sorry, I'm just having a technical issue for a moment. It's really common amongst veterans. Generally about 85 decibels is a safe level to listen to, although it does vary around how long you're listening to a sound for. So if you listen to a loud sound for a long period of time, it will increase the risk that you're at. So if you do need to listen to loud sounds, you need to decrease the level. And obviously lots of veterans have listened to very loud sounds for long periods of time. So for an example, compared to that 85 decibel, which is generally safe, 100 decibels is the level of an aircraft carrier. So sorry, a helicopter is 100 decibels, an aircraft carrier deck is 130 to 160 decibels, a grenade is 158 decibels, and anti-tank weaponry can be 184 decibels. So people may have had a lot of damage to their ears, which could affect their hearing and their tinnitus. And also tinnitus may have been heightened by the stress of, you know, the uncertain year that we've had. So if you bang your foot, a good analogy is if you bang your foot and you're having a good day, you might not even notice. But if you bang your foot and you're having a really bad day, you'll notice a lot more. The same with tinnitus. You will notice that tinnitus is even worse on a bad day. And then that vicious cycle is that the more stressed you become by the tinnitus, the louder it seems, the more stressed you become. And so, you know, that tinnitus is very real in the first place, but it can seem really heightened and much worse because of feeling stress, and that may particularly be a problem this year. You know, it's a really vicious cycle. So I'm going to hand over to Paul now, and Paul is going to talk a little bit about the different types of tinnitus support that are available, because I think the key message is there is lots available to support people with tinnitus. We know people are often told, sorry, there's nothing that can be done, you've got to learn to live with it. There is lots there. So Paul is now going to explain what is available for people.
Oh, thanks, Crystal. So yeah, as I mentioned, we've got services across the UK, and we might be able to offer service on a local area. But I think the first point of call, the first thing I would love for people that support veterans to write down is our tinnitus helpline. And hopefully my colleagues will be able to put that tinnitus helpline number in the comment section for you below, because they're just a superb level of support. They've had a really high level of training when it comes to dealing with people who are struggling. They've had training to deal with people who are just getting tinnitus, right the way up to people who are really struggling. And sometimes when you are struggling and when you are stressed out and you don't want to wait around for a tinnitus support group to be available, you need to speak to someone there and then. They are the people that I would recommend that the people you support speak to, because they are fantastic. As well as that, like I said, we have got support options across the UK where they offer tinnitus management workshops, coping strategies, because as Crystal mentioned, stress can be a real trigger for tinnitus, and sometimes it's just being aware of the fact that your stress is contributing it, and can change all the difference. I mean, I spoke to one veteran who said he uses his tinnitus as a kind of like a warning light, so he knows when his tinnitus is coming on, he's getting stressed and he needs to kind of reevaluate what's going on at the moment. And it's just things like that can make a big difference for people with tinnitus. As well as that, there are assistive products available for tinnitus. So the first one could be sound therapy to distract away from your tinnitus. Things like music, white noise, the running water sounds. And these can be delivered either through kind of like apps on your phone, or you can actually get specific tinnitus devices which have the sound cards built in. And the specific tinnitus devices, they might have a speaker built in, so you could put it on the bedside table. But obviously, if there's more than one person in the room and you want to keep it more discreet to the person with tinnitus, then you can use things like earphones. You can get pillows with built-in speakers. And you can also, one of the newer products we started seeing was, it's kind of like, it looks like a running headband, but it's actually got headphones built in. So it's more comfortable then to sleep and have the sound coming into your ears. And the other thing to mention as well, again, going back, I keep going on about the hearing loss pathway and hearing aids, but digital hearing aids can also help with tinnitus, because some people think that tinnitus is your brain searching for missing sounds, and with digital hearing aids, they bring your sound. They don't repair your hearing, but they bring the levels back up to what they should be. And so if you're getting back those missing sounds and your brain's not searching, then some people think that can help with tinnitus as well. Also, some of the new digital hearing aids have maskers built in linked to that to white noise, which can help as well. And again, if you want any information on tinnitus, or we've got plenty of fact sheets available on tinnitus. So if you get in touch with us or put a message in the comments box, then we might be able to send something out to you, which can help the people that you support.
Thank you, Paul. I think in terms of tinnitus, like you say, hearing aids are kind of one of the most useful things if somebody has hearing loss and tinnitus. And we know that just by kind of amplifying the sounds around you, you're more likely then to be able to focus on those rather than your own tinnitus sounds. And that's one of the reasons it can be really helpful. There is lots of accurate information out there about tinnitus and support available, but there's also lots of inaccurate information as well. And so, if you or somebody you support at any point is kind of unsure, that's where, again, they can use our tinnitus helpline to check that, a treatment or a therapy that is being suggested is something that is evidence-based and can really support that person. But I think the kind of key takeaway message is there is lots that can be done to support people. A common question that we get asked is, how can people access tinnitus support groups online during any lockdowns or during the current situation? We know the British Tinnitus Association have got lots of online support groups at the moment, and we'll pop a little post in the comments to them. And the British Tinnitus Association, we've got a really good link with, they've also got lots of other information about tinnitus as well. So do get in touch with our helpline if you want to check anything around tinnitus, and just make sure that somebody has kind of got the right information available. So we hope that you've enjoyed this session today and found it helpful. Please do kind of feedback to us any ideas for future sessions that you'd like to see that we can put together. If you have any questions, pop them in the comments and we will get back to you. You can call, email, text us, and we've got a free information pack for veterans as well. So again, if you get in touch with us, we can get those to you so that you can get those out to veterans. It would also be really helpful for us if you can complete the questionnaire. So the feedback's really vital for us for designing future sessions. And this event will be available to watch on LinkedIn. So we hope that you've enjoyed that. And I'd just like to say a big thank you to Paul and Henry for the information that you've put through today as well. And to Bridget for translating for us. Thank you, everyone. We hope you join us in future for any future sessions.